Is it finally time to redraw the map of Africa? Across the continent, the legacies of colonialism remain. Borders drawn by Europeans that split communities apart. Nations created by outsiders who cared more about plunder than people. And then the map of the world, with Africa strangely small at its center. That's been the case since Flemish cartographer Gerardus Mercator created a map that would become the gold standard for imperialism. Perfect for navigation, but as a depiction of the world, activists say it's a deception. Now, the African Union is supporting a campaign to adopt an equal Earth projection. Hashtag correct the map.
The African Union supports this campaign and sees that this campaign, through various actions aimed at promoting this really accurate mapping and addressing historical inaccuracies. So being closely aligned with the AU broader goals of reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage, challenging false narrative and promoting a more accurate and equitable representation of the continent.
Right. So how did Mercator's map lead the globe astray? Take a look at the worldview that generations have seen, taught in school, and accepted as truth. Africa at the center of the world, appearing to be about the same size as the island of Greenland in the far north. Now compare that to this, the equal Earth projection. You can't miss the clear difference, right? Mercator's map shrunk the continent radically from its true size, just like everything else along the equator, while exaggerating the size of lands near the poles, like Greenland, which is not the same size as Africa. It is actually about the same as Egypt and Sudan, just two of Africa's 54 countries. Now, in terms of actual area, you could fit Greenland into the continent 14 times. In fact, there's enough space in Africa to fit in the United States, about the size of Western Africa, as well as China, the same size as Central and Southern Africa with Madagascar. And then there's India. The subcontinent fits comfortably into Eastern Africa with plenty of space to spare. All right, for more on the map, let's bring in Farah Njai, the co-founder and deputy executive director of Speak Up Africa. That's one of the backers of the campaign. Hashtag correct the map. Hello, Farah. Welcome to DW News Africa. We've been using the Mercator map for centuries now. Everybody knows it is just a representation. So does size really matter?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yes, size does matter in this case. We launched the campaign to make sure that we corrected a distortion that has lasted for way too many centuries now, and the projection makes Africa looks much smaller than it truly is. It inflates Europe and North America, and we know that maps are not neutral. So we wanted to make sure that that was corrected because they shape how we see power and identity.
Right. So a bit more on that. Tell us exactly what you're calling for and why it is so urgent to change things now.
So for centuries, right, Africa has been represented in ways that diminishes its size and its importance, and we wanted to challenge that distortion. So Speak Up Africa and Africa No Filter launched the Correct the Map campaign to spark a conversation about representation, power, and identity. So the campaign really seeks to shift the narrative from Africa being shown as marginal to Africa being recognized as vast, central, and indispensable, really. So by correcting the map, what we're really trying to do is correct the story being told about Africa in classrooms, in the media, and in the global imagination.
Yeah, I find that very interesting. Although, it always comes with challenges, right? Like lots of bodies are already using equal Earth. That's the World Bank says it is phasing out Mercator. Even Google gives you the option of the 3D globe view. Isn't it just good to have options?
Yeah, it's perfect. And that's all we want, really. We are calling for the equal Earth projection to be adopted in schools and in media and international institutions. But there are definitely other maps as well. And to be honest, we're not looking for a perfect map. We're just looking for a fair one. So, and equal Earth represents continents at their true relative size while keeping familiar shapes, making it really ideal for teaching and communications. And we know that all maps actually distort, right? Because you cannot flatten the spherical Earth without compromises. That we know. But what equal Earth does is that it prioritizes area accuracy, and which is very, very important when it comes to the proportions of the continents, which is essential for education and perceptions.
Talking about perfect maps or distorted maps, many people, like my producer Jeffrey, when they look at the equal area map, they think that looks weird. Everything is the wrong shape. What would you say to someone like Jeff, my producer?
Well, no flat map is perfect, but equal Earth is honest about proportions, and again, proportions matter. And what we want to focus on is to make sure that people understand that maps are never neutral. They tell a story, and when African children and non-African children also see Africa as being minimized, it also affects their perception and their sense of power as well. And it very subtly, I guess, but it still communicates that Africa is smaller, weaker, and less important. And for the rest of the world, it reinforces stereotypes of Africa as marginal, peripheral, and dependent. And we really want to make sure that by using a better and a fairer map and projection, we're able to correct that and reclaim the fact that Africa is the second largest continent in area and population.
The African Union is now supporting your campaign, which must make you excited. They say that the Mercator map makes Africa look marginal, right? Yet it is in the middle of the map. So how is that marginal?
It's the proportion. Again, when you look at Greenland, for example, it shows Greenland as being about the same size as Africa, when Africa in reality is 14 times larger. So it's really about the proportions that are portrayed in the Mercator map, with the support of the African Union, which is really an important milestone for us. We really see that as a powerful political, signal. It's the first time that a Pan-African institution has taken a clear position on the visual representation of Africa. So for us, it transforms what we had initially thought of being a cultural and a civic demand into a continental political demand addressed to the world. So, and what we are asking again is to be represented fairly and recognized for our true size and significance.
Right. We'll be wrapping up soon with what really that will change on the ground with people's perception and everything. But you're on record as saying that the Mercator map, affects, quote, Africans' identity and pride, especially children who might encounter it in school. Can you explain that a bit?
Well, correcting the map is not just an African issue. It's really about building a fairer and more accurate understanding of the world for everyone. So when non-Africans grew up learning from distorted maps, they also developed this perception of Africa as being marginal and less important, as we said earlier. So for us, accurate maps help everyone recognize Africa's true size, its resource and demographic weight, which is essential for understanding also today's global economy and geopolitics. So by adopting fair representations, schools and media worldwide promote really universal values of truth and justice and equality between people. And when it comes to our African children, I think it's also really important to understand the stakes, the educational stakes, making sure that we change also the way that African children understand their place in the in the world. There's also an important cultural and narrative stake as well, because by correcting the map, we're also correcting the story of Africa after centuries of distorted representation. And finally, I think it's important to also take into consideration the psychological and symbolic stakes, which are really significant. And by showing Africa at its true size, it reinforces pride and confidence among Africans, and especially younger generations, so that they understand their place and their role also in the world.
Yeah, look, I know there are some people that are listening that are thinking, we're chasing all of this and it's not really changing much on the ground when you talk about the economies and, putting, food on the table and money in the pocket. What do you say to people that just feel like this is just a waste of time?
It's not one or the other. Guys, we have to be ambitious, and we need to make sure that we are the ones deciding how Africa is being represented in the world. It's not about, focusing on correcting the map versus fighting corruptions versus focusing on the economy. It's all of it that we need to tackle, at once. And we're really hoping that this will spark a global debate and that will make the right changes. I personally don't think that the change should take us too much time. So if we all agree that the Mercator projection does not serve its purpose anymore, because again, it was a map that was created in the 16th century for maritime navigation, let's change it. We're in 2025. It's not one or the other. Let's just do it all.
Okay, let's just do it. Farah Njai, co-founder of Speak Up Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.